Is that not the story of MCC? Along with the story of our lives. So I have a confession to make to start off with this morning, which is that I have not worked at all on this sermon.
Yeah!
As Sarah Helen just said, stealing my next line. I haven't worked on it at all this week because I've actually been working on this sermon since I was about 29 years old. I'm now 53, so you can do the math. I wanted to share with you today and next Sunday the things that I hope that you will, and that I will also always remember, more than anything else. And today, what I really hope we will all always remember is the precious gift that MCC gives to this world. And to do so, I have to talk about some things that are kind of different in church, but as we always say, if not here, then where? So will you pray with me, please, as we do our best to take in what it is that we fully are and what we bring to this world. God, thank you. Thank you for music. Thank you for the challenges in our lives and how, God, they can make us grow in ways that nothing else can. God, certainly in MCC we have known challenges that few other churches have known to the degree that we have known them. And God, we know that those challenges could have destroyed us, but they have not. And God, in this day and age when MCC is needed profoundly in our world, please help us to understand why. Please help us to understand why through the power of your Holy Spirit moving in us in these moments. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts bring healing, God, healing to our bodies and to the body of this world. Amen. Amen. So I'm going to invite you, if you haven't already done so, to turn off your cell phones. As I mentioned last week, we have this new technology now in the sanctuary that if the cell phone goes off, you automatically make a $200 contribution to the church. It's in the wires, so I'll let you decide whether or not I'm telling the truth. Deoxyribonucleic acid. That's also known as DNA. DNA is present in the first 12 hours that we are formed. And it's true in embryos, and it's true in churches. The DNA of MCC is this. It was started by a man who came from a fundamentalist, conservative, evangelical, Pentecostal tradition, who was defrocked. He was a minister. He was defrocked for being gay. And he lost everything when he came out, and he nearly lost his life because he tried to take it. But according to his own words, Troy Perry said, God said, I am not done with you yet, get back in the ring. And so he did, and God said, I have a job for you to do, and it was to begin what we are in right now. And a lot of folks know about Troy that, he came from a Pentecostal background. If you've ever met Troy, you cannot miss that he's from a Pentecostal background. He is huge and loud and loves to say, praise the Lord, saints. Yeah, that's not a very good approximation, but yeah. Turn the volume up a whole bunch, and you'll have Troy. He was a father. He was a husband. His children. Troy also identifies as a leather daddy. He's a leather man. If you don't know what leather is, probably in this day and age, it's very different now than it was 30 or 40 years ago. Just take 50 Shades of Grey and just have an approximate idea. But that was a part of Troy that he never, ever once hid, not even as the leader of our denomination. Not because he wanted everything to be all about him and being outrageous and wild, but because in Troy's DNA somewhere he knew that the sexual and the spiritual are inseparable. That no matter how you express your sexuality, whether you are heterosexual or bisexual or lesbian or gay or pansexual or asexual, however it is you identify your sexuality, it is inseparable from spirituality. He knew this somewhere. He came into the world with this knowledge. And he knew that when his church forced him out the door because he would not and could not any longer cut off his sexuality, he knew that the two cannot exist without one another. And that this was a message that was desperately needed in the world. And it was especially needed among GLBT people who were routinely being destroyed in their churches, in their synagogues, in their mosques, however they worshiped, because of their sexuality. And he said, no more. And he opened up his home and he invited people in, and there was a tiny little service in the very beginning, but from the very beginning, communion was served in the way we continue to do it today, where people can come forward with their loved ones, their spouse or their spouses, wearing leather, having HIV, although honestly HIV was not around yet then, and it wasn't long before it was. But however they were in their body, their beautiful bodies God gave them, they could come forward to this table wearing leather with their partners, with their same-gender partner, their differently gendered partner, and there were heterosexual people in that very first service from the very beginning at MCC. From the very beginning, our DNA included all of these things because the heart of our DNA is that the sexual and the spiritual cannot be separated. And one of the things I have struggled mightily with in my times as a pastor in MCC is people saying, well, why do we have to talk about the gay thing? Why? It's 2018. We don't need to keep talking about the gay thing. We must keep talking about the gay thing because it's not a gay thing. It's not a trans thing. It's bigger than being only a gender thing. It is about, you cannot come to God and fully experience God and cut off any part of yourself, especially your sexuality or your gender, and how you live those out in the world. You just can't do it. And the reason is because how God gets to us is in our bodies. With me? First time visitors, still breathing? Just checking. We have medical professionals here, but we'd rather let them just worship. It can't be done. The sexual and the spiritual are inseparable. As I have said in sermons before, without being too graphic, I want you to think for a moment. What is the one three-letter word we all say at peak moments? The peak moment. That is no coincidence. We may laugh about it, but I do not think, and I've never thought it is a coincidence. What more intimate, miraculous prayer can we utter in that moment than to cry out to God? Oh God! I'm leaving, so you know. You notice my timing is just right? And this is why the wounding, oh my gosh, the wounding that our community experiences when we have been kicked out of churches. And I don't care what your sexual orientation is here today. If you are a straight person here, for some reason you are here because you have lived this wounding on some level. That's what I believe about every heterosexual person that ever comes to MCC. You have known oppression at some level that draws you here. And the wounding, when you are told, God, that you are an abomination, a stench in the nostrils of God, which is what we are called, because of how we love, because of how we experience sexual pleasure, because of how we live our gender. When you are told that, it is a profound wounding that takes a lifetime to undo. And it takes a church, a religious community, big enough to provide a place for the healing, for it to really happen. And we're fortunate in 2018. There are other communities that do it. But I will go to my grave saying nobody does it like MCC.
Yeah.
Nobody. And it's not because we're better or because we're superior. It's not. It's because we know in our bodies that the two can't be separated. And that's why we're here. We know that. And this is the precious gift that we have to give to the world. It may be 2018. It doesn't matter. There are people all over this world today suffering. People in this country, people in this state, people in this county suffering because somebody with some religious something or other is telling them they're going to hell. Or that they are poisoned because they have HIV. Or that there's something wrong with them because maybe their family doesn't look like a traditional family for all kinds of reasons and ways. And it's all a lie. It's not true. God made all of us in such glorious diversity. And there is no religious body I know of like MCC that says so outrightly and so proudly, all are welcome in this place. This is why I chose the scripture reading from the Song of Songs this morning. I've taught lots on the Song of Songs in my time here, and if you don't know about it, it's in the Hebrew scriptures. You might know it by the words, the Song of Solomon. But basically, it is an erotic love poem in the Bible about two people. The woman is the dominant character in this story. Very, very, very uncharacteristic of the Bible. They are not married, and it's all about sexual pleasure that they pursue. Not for procreation, just because. Just because. And it's a glorious book full of beautiful words of passion and abundance and hedonism. The name of God is not mentioned anywhere, and yet ancient rabbis have called the Song of Songs the holiest of all scriptures. But nobody ever preaches on it, and nobody ever learns about it in Sunday school, because churches just don't want to deal with an erotic love poem. And it's been called all kinds of things. Well, it's really an allegory about the chaste love of the Virgin Mary. I kid you not. It's really an allegory about the relationship of the church to Christ. It's just an erotic love poem in the Bible. But oh my Lord, we can't possibly have that, so we have to call it all these other things. That's how deep this thing goes, this lie. But God made us sexual beings. And God made us spiritual beings. And when the two are actually given permission to come together, those in whom that energy unites are unstoppable. And I don't know if I should say this in this moment, but the Spirit just gave it to me, so I'm going to say it. I think evil brought HIV into the world to stop us. Because MCC was at its peak. That song we sang this morning, We Are the Church Alive, that was composed in 1980. Man, we were on a roll. We were growing, MCCs were exploding everywhere. It was awesome. We were taking off in a huge way. And what better way to utterly annihilate a community like MCC than to bring in a disease that people were vilified for having, for the ways they had sex with their bodies. What better weapon? But you know what? We sang that song at MCC San Francisco, We Are the Church Alive. We had 400 people in the sanctuary at night. Men lying in the pews, connected to their IV drip, getting to church any way they had to so that they could sing, We Are the Church Alive. Because they said this disease is not going to stop us. It is not going to stop this church. It is not going to destroy MCC. And it didn't. It almost did. And to this day, we are still recovering. But honestly, I can't think of anything else. And think about what a huge, huge thing HIV was and is. And I don't mean to imply for a second that it's only affected gay men. Oh my goodness. All women, people of color, children. But I'm just saying, a disease whose primary transmission was through sexuality. It took something that big to stop us. But it didn't, and we're still here. Amen? This is the gift of MCC. And what happens when you actually get to be a person who has your sexuality and your spirituality united in your being and supported by community? What that does is it gives birth to unstoppable compassion. Show me a person with no compassion, I will show you someone who is sexually miserable and spiritually bereft. You cannot have sexuality and spirituality alive and well in you and not be compassionate. It is not possible, which is the other precious gift we give, which is our passion for social justice. I always say, MCC, justice is not just for us. We cannot be who we are and have what we have and not do all that we do to feed those in need, to speak out against HIV stigma, to welcome those who have no homes literally into our home, to sleep on our floor, which we are now doing. To do all that we can to help and support and empower those who are most vulnerable in our world. It is the natural outgrowth when you get to be all of who you are, that you just can't help doing everything you can so that everybody can be who they are. Yes? Yes. These are the gifts of MCC, precious, incredible gifts. And if I have one thing to say before I go, it is please don't let it die. HIV did not stop MCC, but I'll tell you what else can, and that's apathy.
Yes.
Apathy. Apathy in the belief that, oh, you know, it was a nice thing to have. Okay. Oh, moving on now. I'm not moving on. Sarah Helen's not moving on. We are MCC till the day we die. We're going to be doing MCC work wherever we go, just not in the same form we've been doing it. And if you leave after we leave, it will die. God will bring in new people, I'm sure of that. But every church needs institutional memory. And all of you here have institutional memory. Many of you, not everybody. Many of you have institutional memory this church needs and experience now. And we have to pass it on generation to generation to generation. And if you don't think MCC is not still needed in the world today, I want to tell you a story that I'll close with. It includes another confession, and here we go. So if you haven't figured it out by now, we haven't made a big secret of it, but we haven't made a big deal out of it either. Sarah, Helen, and I are members of the Leather community. We came from San Francisco, the land of the spiritually adventurous. That's who we are. And when I came out as lesbian, it wasn't long until I came out about other parts of myself as well. And when I was in my late 20s working towards ordination at MCC San Francisco, there was a man there by the name of Bill Pugh. Bill loved to sew. Loved to sew. And when he first came to MCC San Francisco, he looked around and saw how drab it was, and he went up to Jim Matulski, who was the senior pastor, and said, "Honey, you need help." And so he started making all these wonderful vestments and altar cloths and everything for the church. And he made a stole for Jim Matulski that looked like this one, except Jim's is made out of naugahyde. Mine's real leather. Bill didn't have a machine that could sew leather at the time, so he used naugahyde for Jim's. But I loved Jim Matulski's stole. And I went up to Bill one day and I said, "Bill, I would love to have a stole like that." He said, "Oh, okay, well, we'll see." Bill was, I was in my late 20s. Bill was in his 50s. He had been a United Methodist minister, kicked out of his church for being gay. Found a home in MCC, found a place where his gifts could be used. He was a wonderful person. And when I was an intern at MCC San Francisco, one of my jobs was to call people throughout the week to see who would be communion servers and communion holders and readers. Some things never change. Those of you who get text late from me on a Saturday night. But one evening I had called Bill Pugh's home. And his partner answered the phone, and he was so distraught he could barely speak because he had literally just walked in the house. and found Bill dead from a heart attack. I mean, literally, just in that moment when I called. In the weeks that followed, about 2 weeks later, when we had Bill's memorial service, his partner came up to me and he said, Bill was working on this for you. And he didn't quite finish it. It needed a little thing done right up here, and so I got that taken care of, but I wanted to give this to you today. And I love that story because, well, for so many reasons. But in what other church will a man from a mainline Christian denomination in his 50s make something in secret to celebrate the sexuality of a budding, brand new baby dyke trying to get ordained, and do it in secret so he could surprise her with this beautiful gift? In what other church would that happen? Where a man was supporting the sexuality of a woman who could not have been more different from him, making space for all of the ways we express our sexuality. In what other church? And do you know what's going to happen? Probably, I don't know all the details, but maybe in the next year or so. The United Methodist Church is probably going to split over the issue of us. So while the rest of the churches are breaking up and splitting and splintering and arguing over just a load of crap, and there is no other word for it, we have got to be here. Not with anger, but with joy. To say this is not how it's supposed to be. Church is supposed to be the place where you can come and be everything, all of who you are, how God made you to be, without shame, so that your real life purpose and your real life energy and your real life calling and joy and everything you do can be about giving God's love away. That is the precious gift of MCC. And it is my prayer that as we go forth, we will all keep doing this work and bringing this precious gift into our world together, no matter where.